Not quite my tempo. Here we go. 5, 6, and...
Editing in cinema is something that we usually don't pay much attention to. Not only that, but it's also something that filmmakers don't want us to notice. After all, editing is the art of fluidifying a movie, and in most situations, the more it is easy to spot, the worse it is. Most people would consider that editing should be as unnoticeable as possible. Cinema has come such a long way that it's the absence of editing that anyone can notice. But in 1925 it wasn't the case, and even though the invention of cinema is often attributed to the Americans and the French, it is a Russian man who most undoubtedly had the biggest impact on the seventh art. Sergueï Eisenstein is born in 1898 in the Russian Empire. In 1917 he was serving as an engineer in the Red Army during the Russian Revolution, but quickly ends up working as a set designer and director, first for theater, then for cinema. After a first movie released in 1925, Stachka, Strike in English, Eisenstein released in the same year the movie that will earn him the name of Father of Montage, Battleship Potemkin. Even though Eisenstein wasn't the first to efficiently use editing in movie making, D.W. Griffith being often cited as a pioneer with his 1915 Birth of a Nation, he was certainly the first to understand that editing wasn't just a tool used to give structure to a movie, but more so one that would give him total manipulative powers over his films. Eisenstein quickly became a master at manipulating the emotions of the audience, for example by using conveniently timed close-ups, thus giving more personality to his mute characters. He also used editing to convey ideologies and personal thoughts and opinions. Sometimes in a somewhat discreet manner, but most of the time clearly not as much. But his greatest strength was his realization that editing gave him the ability to bend time to his will. Probably Eisenstein's most famous work, the Odessa Steps sequence from Battleship Potemkin, mostly known for having heavily inspired Brian De Palma for the staircase scene in The Untouchable, is featured for more than 7 minutes in the movie, whereas in real time, the bloody event that it shows would have probably been over in a minute. The filmmaker experimented many editing techniques which became widely popular later on. Most of these techniques have been used in Battleship Potemkin. The first of them, the metric montage, defines the fact of cutting, based on a tempo, a succession of shots of similar length, whereas the rhythmic montage, similarly to a previous one, is also based on a tempo, but depending on what's happening in the shot, the rhythm of the cuts can either be sped up or slowed down. Both techniques can be used to show a succession of actions, or even to intensify their build-up. Another technique is the tonal montage, where the cuts will depend on the composition of the shot, lighting, colors, shapes or shadows, to try to create opposition or harmony between two sequences. And finally, the intellectual montage, which consists in the fact of using shots as allegories. By using these editing techniques, Eisenstein learned that he could put the emphasis on anything he wanted. During the Odessa Step sequence, the camera doesn't focus as much on the event in its entirety, as on all the personal human-scale dramas that happen during the shooting. Eisenstein uses close-ups, different perspectives and angles, and seems to slow down time by focusing on many different characters one after the other. By doing that, he managed to show the large-scale terror of the massacre while still making sure that the scene was very emotional and personal. The Russian director knew when to heavily edit his footage, and when to leave it mostly unedited. Most of the editing techniques that we use and abuse nowadays in our cinema were pioneered by Eisenstein. For most of his career, he didn't focus on characters but rather on larger scale situations and events, and because of that, for all intents and purposes, the main character of his movies, most of the time, is the editing itself. If you reached that part of the video, thank you. I've been wanting to talk about something else than video game for a very long time now, and I hope I did a decent job at it. If you liked it, feel free to leave a thumbs up and maybe even consider subscribing. See you next time.